Hi there everyone, welcome to our video release hub. Today I'll be sharing 3 different looks using the same stamp. So let's get started. I will use the Builder Garden Rose Reverie Stamp Set, and I have already cut out an A2 sized panel out of the 5x7 hot pressed watercolor cardstock. I will stamp the image in Obsidian pigment ink, and because I will heat emboss the image, I will first prep the panel with anti-static powder and then stamp it with Obsidian pigment ink. Next, I will cover it with crystal clear embossing powder and heat set it. Heat embossing the image makes the watercolor process slightly easier as the water and pigment are easy to control. I will use the watercolor brush markers to color the image, starting with ruby red for the flower from the Winter Wonderland set. I will use the brush directly and apply this to where I want to show depth or shadows. You can also add some pigment onto the watercolor palette. Right now I am applying this to the end of the petal where it connects to the flower center, which is what I do most of the time. You can work on one petal at a time or add pigment to several, your choice. I will just show you a few petals since it's so easy to do. I will now use one brush to activate the pigment and pull it out towards the petal tips. This is a number 1 size brush, and once I'm midway, I will use another clean brush, size 4, and spread the pigment, which will be much softer as now the brush will have water and no pigment. Repeat this with all the petals. This will give the petal tips a soft look. You can also pick up pigment using a tissue if you think there is too much water or a bit of variation will help. It's super easy watercoloring and the heat embossing will help. Once the flowers are colored, I will apply color to the leaves similarly but step it up by bringing in another color. I will first apply a very small amount of tree bark watercolor just to the base of the leaves and then activate it with yellow ochre watercolor, leaving a bit of space at the tips of the leaves. Then I will use the water for blending. Don't worry too much about how this looks. The dark and the light colors will make this work. I will dry the panel slightly once the image is colored. To add color to the background, start by first adding an outline along the edge of the image. I'm using tree bark watercolor for this. And then drag the brush at an angle in one direction. I'm dragging the brush towards the edge. This can be downwards or upwards, depending on where I am adding color. Once I've added this sort of dry brush texture to the panel, I will use the number 4 fine watercolor brush and activate the pigment by swiping the brush vertically in one direction, only once or at most twice, so I don't lose the texture from dry brushing. My brush has a bit of water in it, so that I don't need to go back in twice to get water. I just have to swipe once. Next, you can use the heat tool to dry the panel and mask off the image using the stamp and add titanium white gouache to add more texture using the number 4 fine watercolor brush. This is optional. If you like, you can even add black splatters. This will add more texture and drama to the background. To add bling, use Sicilian amber gem sparkles and then stamp a sentiment and pop it up. Now I will stamp the image twice on Classic Crest Solar White, once in Obsidian pigment ink and once in Permanent Mist gray ink. I will show you the inking process once only, but I will be inking both images in the same manner. Obviously, both of these will look different once inked since the second image will give a no-line look. Keeping the same color palette, I will start by adding Coral Berry Fresh Dye ink from the base of the petal with a heavy hand, concentrating it heavily on this area and reducing the pressure significantly as I move to the petal tip, so there is little to no ink on the tips. Next, I will add Ruby Red Fresh Dye ink just to the base using a detailed blending brush. This will replicate the look of the first card panel. If you prefer a darker ink, darker than ruby red, you can use it for the petals in the center. That is your preference. For the leaves, I will use yellow ochre and rhodolite fresh dye inks. First, I will apply yellow ochre fresh dye ink, softening it when I reach the tip of the leaves. Next, I will use Rhodolite fresh dye ink and apply it to the base of the leaves, adding depth and dimension. I will also do this for the next layer of the stencil. It is super easy to ink. I'm trying to replicate the same effect I achieved with watercolor, but using stencils and ink. So if watercolor isn't your thing, we have simple coloring stencils with this Builder Garden to make your life easy. And cut to the no line coloring result. Doesn't it look beautiful? It's so good, right? Just have to stamp in the permanent mist gray ink. I die cut both images using the coordinating die. For my second card, I will use panel of Sicilian Amber cardstock and emboss it with the Wanderlust 3D embossing folder. But before doing that, I'll apply yellow ochre fresh dye ink around the entire edge. Now I will run this through the die cutting machine with the Wanderlust 3D embossing folder. Next, I will use the Rhodolite fresh dye ink and gently apply this all around the edge, softly bringing it inwards. You can use a small blending brush if you have a heavy hand when it comes to ink blending, or you don't have good control. Once finished, use antique gold pigment ink and gently swipe the ink pad across the panel. If you'd like to add more of the gold ink, you can also apply it to the edges. Then decide how you'd like to place the image. I will be positioning it off the edge and then filling in leftover space wherever it fits. Before adhering the image, I added black splatters with carbon black wash and heat embossed a sentiment in antique gold and jet black cardstock, then adhered a strip of citrine glitter cardstock. I also added a few champagne sequins. For the no line image card, I wanted to create a look that is off the edge. So I cut a 2.75 by 5.5 piece of cardstock to adhere the image on. I added score lines to the panel that I will adhere to the card base. This will show on the left side of the image. I will adhere a strip of dazzling diamond glitter cardstock under the panel where the image will go on and then adhere this to the card front. I stamped the sentiment in yellow ochre fresh dye ink because I wanted to keep the softness of this card. I hope you like the cards. Don't forget to leave a comment and hop with us. Please let us know which product you like best in this release. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
Wait, we have more where that came from. If you're after fabulous card making tutorials, you are definitely in the right spot. Our amazing design team create and upload fabulous video tutorials right to this YouTube channel. If you don't want to miss another amazing crafting tutorial, don't forget to subscribe and click that fun red button that you can see. Let's become paper crafting experts together.